Around 30% of our planet is covered in trees. Trees are majestic, help biodiversity and can reduce climate change. But we're cutting them down at an alarming rate. Since the start of human civilization, it's estimated that we've cut down almost half the trees on Earth. So, what would happen if all of us, and that's all 7.7 billion of us, planted a tree? Well, there might be 7.7 billion of us, but it's estimated there are currently over 3 trillion trees on the planet. 7.7 billion more trees would be a valuable step forward. But we'd need to go further to make a really substantial difference to the environment. But we could. In fact, according to one estimate, if we planted 1.2 trillion trees, we'd cancel out a decade's worth of CO2 emissions by the time the forests mature. So that's more like 160 trees per person. Trees take carbon dioxide out of the air and release oxygen, making them a natural source of carbon capture. Planting 1.2 trillion more trees could capture up to 100 gigatons of CO2, on top of the 400 gigatons captured by all our existing trees. Trees planted near the equator can be especially beneficial, as they grow much faster in the warm, wet and humid environment. Let's imagine that happened. In as little as 20 or 30 years, entire woodlands and forests would be established. And in 100 years, these trees would grow and mature, safeguarding habitats that otherwise get cut down. We'd also see a rise in biodiversity as trees get older and start to decompose, because they, along with dead trees, offer a habitat to all kinds of fungi and insects. On top of this, we could see a positive impact to our mental health, as studies have shown.
Well, according to the American Psychiatric Association, addiction is a complex condition of the brain where a person has compulsive substance use despite there being harmful consequences. People with addiction tend to have an intense focus on what they're addicted to the point where it takes over their life. What makes it so hard to break an addiction is that it can change the way your brain is wired, giving you harsh cravings that make it difficult to stop. Studies of brain imaging have even shown changes in areas of the brain that relate to judgment, decision-making, learning, memory, and behavior control. So is this what's happening with Facebook and social media? It's hard to say for sure. That being said, we are starting to give more credit to an addiction that might be pretty similar: video games. That's because the American Psychiatric Association includes Internet gaming disorders as disorders that requires further research, but that can result in clinically significant impairment or distress. The World Health Organization has also added gaming disorders to their International Classification of Diseases, which is used by medical practitioners around the world to diagnose conditions. Now, online video games are obviously not the same as a site like Facebook, yet they do have similar social aspects.
But actually, it turns out there's a twist here, because givers are often sacrificing themselves, but they make their organizations better. We have a huge body of evidence, many, many studies, looking at the frequency of giving behavior that exists in a team or an organization. And the more often people are helping and sharing their knowledge and providing mentoring, the better organizations do on every metric we can measure. Higher profits, customer satisfaction, employee retention, even lower operating expenses. So givers spend a lot of time trying to help other people and improve the team, and then unfortunately they suffer along the way. And I want to talk about what it takes to build cultures where givers actually get to succeed. So I wondered then, if givers are the worst performers, who are the best performers? And let me start with the good news. It's not the takers. Takers tend to rise quickly, but also fall quickly in most jobs. And they fall at the hands of matchers. If you're a matcher, you believe in an eye for an eye, a just world. And so when you meet a taker, you feel like it's your mission in life to just punish the hell out of that person. And that way justice gets served. Well, most people are matchers, and that means if you're a taker, it tends to catch up with you eventually. What goes around will come around. And so
As an individual caught selling a large quantity of drugs in my late teens, I knew firsthand the power of opportunity as opposed to the wrath of the criminal justice system. Along the way, with the help and guidance of my district attorney, my supervisor and judges, I learned the power of the prosecutor to change lives instead of ruining them. And that's how we do it in Boston. We helped a woman who was arrested for stealing groceries to feed her kids get a job. Instead of putting an abused teenager in adult jail for punching another teenager, we secured mental health treatment and community supervision. A runaway girl who was arrested for prostituting, to survive on the streets, needed a safe place to live and grow, something we could help her with. I even helped a young man who was so afraid of the older gang kids showing up after school, that one morning instead of a lunchbox into his backpack, he put a loaded 9mm. We would spend our time that we'd normally take prepping our cases for months and months for trial down the road by coming up with real solutions to the problems as they presented. Which is the better way to spend our time? How would you prefer your prosecutors to spend theirs? Why are we spending $80 billion on a prison industry that we know is failing, when we could take that money and reallocate it into education, into mental health treatment, into substance abuse treatment and to community investment so we can develop our neighborhoods?
For too long, discussions about climate change have been about sacrifice. I am here to tell you that climate solutions actually make a better city and a better quality of life for everyone. This is only the first of 5 lessons we have learned on our journey to become an emission-free city. And I think these lessons can be applied almost anywhere. So I like to share them. So lesson number 1, confronting climate change is about creating better cities and better quality of life for everyone, including those kids in the kindergarten, that don't have to share their days with noisy excavators. The second lesson is about being ambitious. In 2015, the City Council set a target of reducing greenhouse gas emissions by 95% by 2030 without purchasing any carbon offsets. So aiming for real reductions. Commitment to this goal changed our mindset. If we were going to reach this target, every department had to get active, figure out measures and finding out how to implement them. So second lesson, be ambitious. A target measured in years, not decades, provides no excuse for inaction.